Hello, my wonderful scholars. Now, we just got through our initial read of I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and we're going to jump into the analysis now that we have read it through as a whole. So before we start our analysis of the text, we're going to need to identify the tag. And the tag stands for title, author, and genre. And the reason why we're going to want to identify these three components is because we're going to be referencing each of these as we answer text-based questions. So the title of our wonderful, wonderful poem is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And notice that I have the title in quotation marks. The reason for this is we always put poems, articles, song titles in quotation marks. This is just how MLA has us do it. So we want to make sure that we put the title, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, in quotation marks. Next component of tag is that we identify the author. And the author is the wonderful, magnificent Maya Angelou. The next thing I want to make sure that I include within my identification of the author is the years that she lived, when she was alive, because if I know when she's alive, I'm given further context as to what could have inspired her to write this poem, what her lived experiences were that led her to write, that led her to create the metaphors, the imagery, the symbolism that we see in I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So, Maya Angelou was born in 1928, and she died in 2014, so just 6 years ago. So the reason why this is important and why I'm making sure that we identify this is because we know from reading Freedom Walkers that the Montgomery bus boycott within the civil rights era began on December 5th, 1955. And that means that Maya Angelou was around when that was happening. In fact, she was an adult when the civil rights era really took off, and Black people, or African Americans, began fighting against the injustices of segregation and fighting against the oppression that white Americans were perpetuating in society. So we know that Maya Angelou is writing from the perspective of a Black woman who experienced the injustices of Jim Crow America, so those segregation laws. The next component of tag is that we're going to identify the genre. So the genre of the text is that it's a poem. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video, write down these components, write down the identification of tag so that you have these ready to reference when you start your text-based questions tomorrow. That way you just have it on hand. So go ahead, pause the video, and write down these notes.